Now let's talk about faith in God, and I want to read verse 6.
Yeah, this is important.
And without faith is impossible to please him, for whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and he rewards those who seek him. So there's 3 points here that I think are really important. First of all, that faith is the inescapable ingredient of a life that's pleasing to God. If you care at all about pleasing God, if that is in your heart, and if you're a Christian, it should be. Mm-hmm. That should be the highest motive you have for anything you do. Not, does this please me, but does this please God? Let me just stop here and talk about this. I'm going to talk about the most embarrassing application of this. Sex. If all I have, I'm going to talk about a marriage first, is the highest pleasure for me in sex is my pleasure. Mm-hmm. I will use my wife like an object for my sexual pleasure. Mm-hmm. There are many Christian wives whose husbands use them to get off, who don't feel honored, don't feel loved, don't feel tenderness in sex. That's because that man has no higher purpose than his own pleasure. Mm-hmm. It also means she's been reduced to an object. Stay with me here. And that means that man is very susceptible to internet pornography. Mm-hmm. Because
it's about him.
It's a lot easier to just be satisfied by a machine that I don't have to have a relationship with at all if I've gotten used to it's all about my pleasure, that's it. Mm-hmm. Now, if it's about the pleasure of God, then I'm immediately thinking, is God honored by what I do here? Is he honored by the way I use my sexual parts? Is he honored by the way that I treat my wife as loving her, as Jesus loved the church, giving myself up for her? Mm-hmm. It just changes the whole thing.
Yeah.
Now, how many people go into sex, Christian people, thinking the highest pleasure that should drive me right now, even though I have an erection, mm-hmm. I'm serious,
I know,
is the pleasure of God.
Yeah.
What if a Christian couple, people will think this is Paul Tripp being weird, would hold hands and pray together before they did the deed, that God would be honored by everything that happens? Makes me want to weep.
Yeah. It's, recognizing that something like sex is not about sex itself. It's about pointing us to something outside of sex that makes us appreciate sex all the more. Now, I didn't know you were going to go here because we didn't discuss this beforehand, but I'm kind of glad you did, because you're talking about the practicals of what it looks like to walk by faith. And there are certain areas in our lives that we go, yes, this is walking by faith. Evangelism, that's certainly walking by faith. Studying God's word and then trying to live a life that pleases God, that's living by faith. But not many people would go, yeah, sex, that's living by faith.
Well, here's why. Because
it's everything. It's everything in our lives.
Because take sex for example. Sex is always an act of worship. Because I'm worshiping sexual pleasure.
Right. Yep.
I'm worshiping the other person. I'm worshiping myself, mm-hmm. or I'm worshiping God, or a horrible, troublesome mix of all right, of the above.
It's not either.
This weird
either or,
stew.
Yeah. And there's grace that covers.
But so we should have on our mirror in the morning the phrase, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Mm-hmm.